exciting conclusion to Caleb Maupin destroys Caleb Maupin with Jason Unruh's Marxism 101 talking points, because there are just a few minutes left of that. And I want to just have the whole thing done for when I actually cut it together as a proper video. And that's only a few minutes, so we'll probably have time to do some other stuff too. But first of all, we're just going to get stuck into some Geoguessr. Let's see where we end up. Okay, we got scuffed infrastructure. Basketball hoops. We got mailboxes. No, I'm not seeing mailboxes. I mean, this feels kind of North American. The houses, the basketball hoops, the layout of this. Yeah, number plates are the right shape for it. That looks Canadian. That looks like the ugly-ass Canadian fire hydrants, which we recently learned are also present in Iowa. Ah, okay. That is the Canada Post symbol right there. There's a boat out front. So there's clearly a body of water nearby. We got any fucking street signs in this place? Andrew and Brownsma. I mean, so far this could, apart from the obvious Canadian indicators, this could be pretty much anywhere between about fucking Yellowknife and San Antonio. Is there a main street I could get onto? Because this is not a very informative suburb. Okay, that's not a main street. That. Okay, look. Okay, good. We got some council buildings, I think. Ah, well, no, it's a Taco Bell. Okay, also, let's see, Taylor's Convenience. Canada Post, Post du Canada. Yes, that's right. So I recognize that symbol. So we are in a Canada. Which Canada are we in? Property, guys. 519 area code. Yeah, that is not ringing a bell. 514, I know. Yep, hello, Shakespeare. Yes, this is definitely, shitballs. Am I on mute? What's going on? Am I not plugged? I'm plugged in. Okay, I see what happened. I got my audio output and my input mixed up. Okay, yes, this is definitely Canada. Excellent. Yeah, it's happened sometimes. I just mix up Audio-Eingabeaufnahme and Audio-Ausgabeaufnahme, and you hear the music louder than I intend, and the speech not as loudly as I would hope. Oh, that's right, I have to fix that too. Wrong thing. There we go. Excellent. Yeah, definitely Canada. There's Post to Canada. We've got a Canada Post symbol. Seen the Canadian style hydrant. We're in some Anglo-Canadian residential boredom emporium. I mean, this could be anywhere, really. I mean, were it not for the specific indicators of Canadianness, it could really be anywhere from, like, Yellowknife down to San Antonio, practically. But as it is, it's hard to say. 226 area code and a 519 area code. Yeah, statistically, Ontario's generally a good bet since it's just absolutely huge. CGI construction. Though, I don't know, 519 area code, I don't know if that is actually Ontario. Dufferin and Arnold. There's a Dufferin in Toronto, I think, actually. Goodwill. Ontario's Distance Education and Training Network, le réseau d'éducation et de formation à distance de l'Ontario. Yes, we are in the Ontario. L'Ontario. Service Ontario, just hammering the point in. Wallaceburg. Okay, we can work with Wallaceburg. Oh, hello, Jill S. Actually, I will be wrapping up. I don't know what everything I'm going to be doing. However, I can say there is like 6 or 7 minutes left of the video that I've been reacting to lately. And I want to do I want to get those, I want to do those just so I have them when I'm cutting together part 2 of Caleb Maupin Destroys Caleb Maupin. Other than that, I don't know for sure whether I'm going to be doing more Maupin, but I wouldn't rule it out. I've got a bunch of stuff in my reaction fodder playlist from him. Got a bunch of, like, PragerU bullshit as well. I got a whole collection of bullshit to respond to. Petroleum, Port Burwell, Kitchener, Guelph. This towel. Payne Court. That's a great name for a town. Okay. Wallace Town. But we're after Wallaceburg. Wallaceburg! Hello, Wallaceburg. Got it. Right on Walpole Island. Lunar Box or Atom something? I don't think I have. Tell me about them. The names kind of ring a very vague sort of a bell. There's Dufferin Avenue. There's the obligatory Tim Hortons. Okay, now let's figure out what street this is. We know it's near Dufferin Avenue. Tell me about Loner Box and Adam something. Yes. Oh, that's right, there wasn't a fucking street sign anywhere around here. Okay. Now, the Hospira content I've mostly done has been, like, responding to aristocracy. Andrew and Brownsma, that's what it was. Okay, and that's near the Taco Bell near Dufferin Avenue. I've done a few, like, watching, like, aristocracy's Nakba denialism. Well, I should call it soft Nakba denialism. And just other, bullshit. And how she's very quick to call all sorts of things anti-Semitic, but when it comes to the just blatant, not even concealed anti-Semitism of fucking J.K. Rowling, suddenly she wants to get all nuanced about it. Dow, Elgin. Mark and Sarah's No Frills. There we go. Garnet, Maplewood, Chestnut, Pine, Elm. Well, my main NATO simp is Fosh. Yeah, there we go. So in western Wallaceburg by whatever that fucking island was called again. Walpole Island. $169, $49.99. I mean, I think the reason that Caleb Maupin and Vosh hate each other so much is fundamentally that they have the exact same grift. La Massana. That's the Volado. I think we may possibly be in a Catalan-speaking place. Andorra! I don't think I've ever been taken to Andorra before. Credit Andorra. Okay. Escaldas and Gordania, Arinsal and Pau. Nice thing about Andorra is it's tiny, so in Camp, La Massana, okay. Oh, fun. They're just all such wonderful people, all these, like, liberals and reactionaries, and their desperate attempts to distinguish each other from each other, despite really having way more in common than either of them wants to admit. Hotel Magic La Massana, Parte Bombesta La Massana. Arinsal and Paul and what cum. Hotel La Massana. I believe it's around here, actually. BE? Oh, wow. What jurisdiction is he going to be in? Last I heard he was in Argentina. 5,000 points. Not bad. 43 meters. He's in Argentina. Aristocracy's in Canada. And Foch is in the U.S. Like, and and BE's an Australian. So, like, what court is he? Is he going to take the court in Argentina? In which case, Foch in particular. I mean, if he's going to try to do this outside of a U.S. court, Foch has nothing to worry about, because there's something called the Hague Convention on International Service of Process, and he's not going to manage to get very far. This looks pretty North American once again. With that, I mean, what or where exactly? I mean, it seems like the choice of law issues would be very complicated. Oh, well, yeah. Well, UK defamation law is a hot mess. We're in the US. 15th Avenue and what's this? 7th Street. 15th Avenue and 7th Street, and there's a football field here. Yeah. Come on, give me something. We know we're in the US because it says speed limit. There are only 2 countries in the world that have these rectangular speed limit signs, and Canada's say maximum so that it's the same in both French and English. Yeah. Except with like just a rat's nest of jurisdictional issues. 8th and 13th. This still doesn't tell me where. I mean, this is yet another one of these North American suburbs that just looks like every other... Hold on, that looked like a newspaper name, maybe? No. Langdon Elementary School. Oh, there's another wonderful Caleb Muppet. video I came across when I was working on the music video of Nazgul Ghouls. That is, it's very chef's kiss. It's Caleb Maupin getting really, 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 really fucking angry about wokeness. Well, I'm surprised they hadn't joined earlier. I wouldn't have necessarily considered them to be the trend-bucking type. Oh, come on, give me something here. Phone number. I mean, the infrastructure is scuffed, but it's the U.S. That's the only kind of infrastructure we got. As for that Alex Jones trial, what gets me about this, I mean, his own, like, the Sandy Hook family's lawyer even brought it up in court, that his lawyers had a way to avoid that shit that they accidentally disclosed being used against him in court. A really, really trivially easy way. All they really had to do was write to opposing counsel, say, hey, actually that stuff is privileged and it was disclosed in error, and they would have had an ethical and legal obligation to return the originals and destroy any copies, and it could not have been used in court. I mean, whoever the fuck Alex Jones got for his lawyer, I want to know that person's name just to make sure I don't get them ever. That's not somebody you want representing you, someone who can't, like, be bothered to just say, actually, that was privileged material, so you can't use it against my client in court. This is just endless suburban crap. Come on, give me a main street, give me something, Main Street-ish kind of thing. And is that a council vehicle? I think that's a council vehicle. $701 maybe? It's blurry. Oh, what was that? That might have been a thing. West 5. North Dakota. We're in North Dakota on North Dakota State Route 5. Nice of North Dakota to put the state name on the sign. Okay. 25, 36, 3, 3, 45. Oh no, that's already the state line. We're staying in North Dakota. A phrase that is not often uttered. I have to do this occasionally because Restream will once in a while get a little bit hung up and start withholding messages, and I don't even notice it until like 10 minutes later. So occasionally I just send a message from my end in order to clear out any latency that's going on. Oh, there we go, 5. And Langdon High School. Okay, there we go. That's it. And now we know what North Dakota's state route signs look like. Munich and Nicola. Towner. Langdon. $230, $49.99. Not bad at all. Okay. 4 of 5, and we've got some sort of rock. Okay, we are not in the US or Canada because the speed limit sign is round like the entire rest of the world. I have a feeling we're in Japan. No, we are in Taiwan. Okay, there's a fine. There is a fine for, I think, feeding wild animals. So, okay, we are in Taiwan, in some sort of park. Very nice park. Let me see, have we got a name for this park someplace? Oh, I'm sure it will. It's been doing rather a lot. Eagle Hose Trail. He's been doing a lot of traveling since he started on that, on the CPI grift. Oh, come on. Give me something here. Let's go the other way then. Shingmun barbecue area. Okay. Looks to be by a lake or on the coast or something. Jubilee Reservoir. Yeah, I am... gonna just guess on this one because I have no idea. Oh, bloody hell, this is Hong Kong. It's never taken me to Hong Kong before. Okay, 5 of 5, and we're on water. We're on some sort of body of water. Can we get onto land? Just following these people on a boat? I mean, they seem to be having a very nice time, although they're very blurry, so it's hard to say. Okay, I don't have any fucking clue. Burundi. Or no, wait, this is right by Burundi. What lake is this? Tanzania. 64 points. Oh, I fucked that one up. It's doing quite well until those last two. Because up until now, there's been only one place where I've ever seen traditional Chinese characters used in Geoguessr, and that's always without fail been Taiwan. I didn't know that they had Hong Kong. Okay. Now, get ready for the exciting conclusion of Jason Unruh doesn't understand degrowth, but supports it. Now, just to summarize for anyone who hasn't seen where we've previously been with this saga, it turns out that Caleb Maupin doesn't know what growth is, doesn't know what degrowth is, doesn't know how international agriculture works, apparently actually thinks that people in Africa are living off of Dutch exports of tulips. I mean, it's been a wild ride. And now we're going to come to the conclusion. Oh, fuck off, I don't...
Maybe that's when...
Gonna just move it back a little bit. We've got 7 minutes to go on this. We've got about an hour to go in the stream. So, let's see, where...
Or maybe my whole criticism was that leftists should have been leading the protest, Jason. That maybe when working people are angry at the government...
Yeah, okay, it's worth remembering that at the very beginning of this, he was pointing out that we shouldn't care that it isn't working people, that it is in fact large landowners, the not farmers, but rich motherfuckers who own land and employ people who do farming. And now he switched over and say, oh, when working people are mad at the government. After he got done saying, just at the very beginning, it shouldn't matter that these people are the petty bourgeoisie, or the bourgeoisie, because they're the good side of the capitalist class and all this bullshit.
And are trying to assert their rights. Maybe that's when communists should be leading them and not just defending the status quo.
And let's remember, he specifically said at the beginning of this that it was all about the profit margins of these large landowners. He didn't know what profit margins are. That became very quickly apparent. But that's what this is about, according to him, is the profit margins of large landowners who employ viciously hyper-exploited Eastern European workers to do agricultural labor. And he's saying communists should be leading that protest for the profit margins of large landowners. He has a very interesting understanding of what communism is.
Maybe that's what I said. Did that ever occur to you?
Well, I mean, it isn't. It actually really isn't what you said. You said quite the opposite at the very beginning of this endless fucking video.
Did it ever occur to you that, that our job isn't simply to defend the liberal order from conservative opposition? Did it ever occur to you that...
Okay, and how exactly is defending the a sector of the capitalist class against environmental laws that might cut into their profits in any way opposing the liberal order?
That the reason that these people that are angry at the status quo are rallying around the right wing is because leftists like you have dropped the ball and just...
No, it's probably because they're large landowners and the right wing is much more straightforward about defending their class interests. Class interest, Caleb, have you heard of it? It's where people, depending on, okay, so you have these things called the means of production. And you got some people, see, who own that shit and make a living off of nothing more than the fact that they own it. Then you got other people, see, Caleb, who they have to work for a living. That's why they're called the working class. Now, when you see members of the capitalist class, that's the people who own shit and make money by owning shit, Caleb, protesting against laws that, as you said, cut into their profits. Could it possibly be that it isn't, that they actually do understand their class interests and are acting in defense of them? Like, what exactly is a communist supposed to say to them that is going to convince them that they shouldn't be defending their class interests? I mean, if there's actually a magic word that you could say to capitalists to get them to just give up on defending their class interests, like the CDC has given up on even pretending to care about COVID and monkeypox, then it's about time somebody told us what it was so we can just go around saying it.
It's become shills of the establishment. Continue, please.
Yeah, I love this continue, please. He's just editing a video out of context.
So, I think it's really important to understand not only just exactly who these farmers are, what they represent, what they're doing, and what they're about, but to also understand the context in which it appears.
I have to say, I really hate that Jason Unruh is coming out of this looking like the sensible one. But, I mean, Caleb Maupin has that effect. There's the Caleb Maupin bump. Anyone who has even the slightest comprehension of what's going on in a subject that you debate with Caleb Maupin on is going to end up looking better as a result just because he's just so fucking ignorant.
Like, you mean a global food crisis that we're on the brink of, where people all over Africa and Latin America and other parts of the world are not going to have food because of U.S. imperialism? And
okay, see, earlier he was saying that it was because they passed this law that required them to use more climate-friendly fertilizers. That people in the global south were facing a food crisis because, they can't get their food exports from the Netherlands, because that's what the Netherlands does. They export food to Africa. Except their main agricultural export turns out to be cut flowers. And their food exports pretty much all go, apart from things like their cheeses, which go everywhere, and their beer, which goes everywhere. Everything else, all their other agro-export goes to neighboring countries, especially Germany. That was his explanation for why, whatever the hell he thinks the left is, should be getting behind these Dutch landowners who are fighting to defend their profit margins.
because of their degrowth organic policies they forced on countries like Sri Lanka, and because of the war that they fomented, the NATO conflict they fomented in Ukraine, there's going to be shortages of food. And the context, that's what the context of this is, Jason. That's what the context is. Yeah.
Yeah, but you didn't actually say anything there, Caleb. He's like, that's what the context is. He already said all this shit, or versions of it, or things that actually directly contradicted it 3 or 4 times throughout this video. And I was like, yeah, so maybe we should understand that context. That's what the context is, Jason. Yeah. Yeah, which is, I mean, Jason must feel just so dunked on right now.
Efforts to not destroy the planet by switching to another kind of fertilizer and having regulations is not...
And drive down the food supply at a time we're already having food shortages.
Yeah, okay, this bullshit, I mean, he's said this more than once, and the food shortages we're seeing, the issue, first of all, again, the Dutch agricultural sector is not actually supplying any place that is currently threatened by food shortages. Second of all, he hasn't actually provided any evidence that this will in fact reduce the food supply. And third of all, nobody who's having shortages right now, nobody who's going hungry right now is going hungry because there's not enough food. There is more food than we can eat being produced every year. There's more food than we can eat being produced every year, and half of it gets thrown out before it ever sees the retail markets. I mean, he's just wrong on so many levels.
It's a little bit of a concern, isn't it? I mean, isn't Jason supposed to be a third worldist?
Yeah, yeah, Jason, come on. Aren't you worried about the fact that people in the third world aren't going to be able to eat those Dutch tulips that they survive on? And the gouda that they melt on it? The tulip gouda melt that is so big and yeah, in fucking nowhere, because none of this works that way, you dickhead.
What kind of third worldist wants to starve people in the third world? Because that's what a bunch of wealthy, white environmentalists want to do.
Okay, and again, what does this have to do with anything? Who in the third world is not eating because the Netherlands introduced some new standards on fertilizer?
What kind of third worldist wants crop output to go down?
Which he has in no way demonstrated would be the result of using this fertilizer.
Because that's what BlackRock and Bill and Melinda Gates want to do. I'm sorry. I mean, this guy's supposed to be a third worldist, right? We're all evil.
Well, hello there, Epifanio Jorge de la Santísima Trinidad del Rey. Wait, they're going to have classes at in Dugan's classes? Like, what the fuck kind of classes are they going to have? I mean, like, other than the petty bourgeoisie, which is the class that they seem to be really, really big on.
Evil first world privileged people. But he doesn't seem interested in actually helping people in the third world. I think he wants...
Like, I mean, did he bother to look up? Like, I didn't even have to just... I mean, I having lived in a neighboring country and, you know, had a look around a supermarket, I just kind of already knew that the Netherlands isn't supplying anyone outside of neighboring countries with food. Que pelotudez, weón. Que pelotudez. Yeah. He's gonna teach people in Moscow how to get away from the slime.
To starve them. He wants to starve the third world in order to please a bunch of wealthy people in the first world.
I'm sure that's exactly how he thinks of it too.
Because it's trendy among hip liberals in the first world.
Same thing as lining people up and having to shoot them.
Yes, actually, depriving people of food, Jason, is the same thing. You know, if you kill people by mass starvation, if you impose policies that reduce global food output.
Except, God, this is such bullshit. He repeats the same bullshit over and over again, and then I feel like a bit uncomfortable because it leads to me having to, you know, like, repeat the same corrections. Food output is so. We could cut food output down significantly as long as everything that was produced actually made it to retail. The problem is that the food, it's not that there isn't food, it's that there is not food for them. See, I think his aspirations are more on the, he wants to have his own little cult of personality. And that's why he's going around and finding all these, like, just truly naive, inexperienced young people who will be impressed by the fact that he wears suits and he knows how to sound authoritative, even though what he's saying is absolutely just a hot mess of complete bullshit and ignorance. He wants to be the great leader of something. Hello, Ludlow. And where are you joining us from, Epifanio Jorge de la Santísima Trinidad del Rey?
That is like lining people up and shooting them. That's basically what it is, you know.
Which has nothing at all to do with what we're talking about.
Creating a food crisis and using the food crisis as an opportunity to push these organic policies that reduce crop output, as Samantha Power indicated they want to do. That is killing people. That is what it is, Jason. You are going to kill people in the third world
by reducing Dutch crop outputs.
Because the Dutch farmers are racist.
That's
because the fact that they're racist completely outweighs the fact that that their biggest export crop is not even food. Cool. Welcome. Always glad to see new people here. I've been having quite a few lately. That last video that I put out, there was just a clip show of this fool. Really took off in ways I wasn't expecting.
It's not Malthusianism. That's just trying to save the planet.
Yeah. Driving down the population.
You have not actually explained how any of this is driving down the population. And the thing is, I mean, as I pointed out in, like, the subtitles to the video I did of part 1 of this whole mess, I mean, his argument was all about the Dutch landowners' profit margins. Like, by that logic, he would consider it equally bad if the Dutch Parliament were to decide that the largely migrant workforce that is actually working the fields in the Netherlands actually had to be paid award wages, actually had to be getting their trade union rights and their pensions and all that shit. That would also cut into the profit margin. By Caleb's standards, that's bad. Which is what happens when you just completely abandon even the pretense that you give a shit about the working class. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't think that he is, he's clearly read a few things, but the thing is, he does not understand it. Well, he said it in a way that where he was saying he doesn't want the word communist because all these communists have, like, pink hair and do things like being gay and, like, not liking racism and stuff. And he said, if that's what a communist is, he doesn't want the word. And it's like, and of course, some of us have been pointing out for ages that the word just doesn't apply to him anyway. It's like when Vosh said, I'm thinking of no longer calling myself anarchism, and I forget who it was, quote tweeted him and just totally dunked saying, yeah, that kind of fits because you clearly don't believe in it, and there's no indication that you even understand what it is.
And saying the problem is there's too many people in the world, and trying to reduce the amount of food that's put out there and trying to drive down living standards in order to stabilize the economy.
Oh god, I mean, it's just talking points. It is just a fucking gish gallop of talking points. And these have nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Belief that the problem isn't the irrational capitalist system that's holding back growth.
I see another fucking talking point. And first of all, holding back growth. As we established, he does not know what growth is. At the beginning of this video, he suggested that growth is just, like, literally growing things. That's what growth was in the economic sense. But, I mean, this thing, he keeps on coming back, he's like, yeah, see, the issue is that in capitalism, production is organized irrationally. And then he says, and we need to organize it rationally. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, he doesn't have an answer to that for the most part. But, I mean, the fact that a bunch of large landowners can hold agricultural production in the Netherlands hostage because they don't like losing some of their profits in order to take into account environmental issues. That's kind of an example of how irrational the capitalist mode of production is. That these assholes who contribute nothing to the process, who could disappear off the face of the earth and it would not change anything for the worse in terms of how agriculture works. I mean, if that's not an example of how irrational this mode of production is, I don't know what is. Yeah, it's like Inspirobot trained on the worst areas of Reddit.
The problem is somehow just that there's too many people in the world. Who invented the word overpopulation, Jason?
Which, okay, and he just brings everything back to this. It doesn't matter what you say. You could say, you know, I don't think Stalin's a great model for agricultural policy, and he'd somehow managed to make that about Malthusianism.
Who invented that word? Who invented the word? Malthus.
How's this a dunk? How is that at all a fucking dunk? We all know that Malthus is the one who popularized Malthusianism. He's like the Alexander Dugin of Malthusianism. Malthus is to Malthusianism what Alexander Dugin is to Nazbols. That's what we know that. That's not. I mean, how is that a flex?
Malthusian is when you softly deny the existence of COVID.
I don't deny the existence of COVID. I've had COVID, my friend. I've had COVID. I don't deny the existence of it.
God, I mean, it's like when fucking Giuliani got prostate cancer, and prostate cancer had one fucking job that year. And prostate cancer just decided to phone it in, and we've still got the prick.
Stop it.
Restrictions oppose vaccines on it, leading...
I don't oppose vaccines. I'm vaccinated, Jason. So I don't oppose vaccines. I'm vaccinated.
Now, I had heard something about him taking an anti-vax turn. Certainly, he's connected with some people who have decided to go full-on anti-vax, and in fact, anti-public health precautions, like fucking Max Blumenthal, who fuck knows what his deal is. He used to be a journalist. He used to actually make any sense. I don't think Caleb actually knows and could identify someone in the working class. He seems to define it to just mean white people with reactionary views.
Public, particularly the elderly, the already immunocompromised, so that the convenience of most and the profits of the elite can flow. That is Malthusian.
Jason, What country had the highest COVID deaths?
That would be the U.S. I mean, the U.S. is off the charts on both COVID cases and COVID fatalities. Oh god, that is a great phrase for. I'm gonna have to find a use for that. 2136. I need to fucking write that down. Come back to that. I'll use that as the part of the thumbnail for the next of these. Okay, is he going to say that the U.S. is the COVID world champion? Well, I can buy that he had COVID. I mean, when you look at these events, like when he did the one in Austin that Thought Slime and Soph did, there was like one guy in the entire room wearing a mask, and it was a shitty surgical mask, which isn't particularly handy. I mean, and that just says everything about their their commitment to the working class right there. Because the working class are the ones getting completely hammered by this pandemic because they have to go to fucking work in infectious workplaces with no mitigations, and they're not being issued proper masks. I mean, and they're not necessarily even allowed to use them. So, I mean, like, one thing that somebody who calls themselves communists, claims to care about the working class, could do is model good COVID mitigation practice and issue everybody with some, issue everybody some N95s at the door. Not just one, give them a couple so that they can bring them home, take them to their family, friends, or whatever. Have a few spares. Yeah, I mean, there are two levels of rational. There's rational according to one's own objectives, and capitalism is certainly rational according to its own objectives. I mean, the capitalist class, for the most part, are doing things that are reasonably calculated to achieve their main objective, which is short-term profit at whatever cost, as long as it's somebody else is fucking paying it. But then there's rationality in terms of sort of, like, an overall, like, halfway decent goal. And, like, when Marx and Engels are talking about production being irrational in capitalism, they're saying, compared to what ought to be a decent goal for humanity, namely making sure that people have their needs met and, can enjoy a dignified standard of living and not get completely screwed over, then it's irrational. But, I mean, but of course, I think, like, Marx and Engels would probably completely agree that, I mean, in relation to its own actual objectives, capitalists are acting very rationally. That's the trouble. You can be rational according to totally irrational and, like, disastrous objectives, and that's precisely how we get a situation where we've got two out of control pandemics. We've got climate change is, like, just banging on the door, has actually put a fist through the door and is yelling, "Here's Johnny," and nothing's being done about it. And this fool doesn't want anything to be done about it, except for hoping that maybe fusion will become commercially exploitable sometime, in time for us to avoid being completely screwed. But, so there are levels of rationality, I think.
What country had the highest COVID deaths? It must have been China, right? Their evil communist policies killed everybody.
Yeah, because if there's one thing that Jason Unruh specifically doesn't like, it's Chinese communists. The guy from Maoist Rebel News. Totally, if you want to just sort of position something as something that he obviously would dislike, it's Chinese communists. Just associate it with Chinese communists.
Must have been Russia, right? Must have been Cuba. Must have been Vietnam. Oh, wait. The highest COVID deaths. What country had the highest COVID deaths? Let's find out. It is
the U.S. It is the U.S. And I really hate having to give him this one. But the fact that that doesn't get pointed out more often tells you a lot. Because there's this whole idea that there's just nothing that can be done to get COVID under control, and therefore there's no need to be trying to even find anything to do about it, and everybody's kind of off the hook. Nobody has to take any responsibility for their safety or anyone else's safety, and the government doesn't have to take any kind of responsibility for protecting public health, even though they claim that that's one of the things that they as a government are there for. But the minute you look at the fact that, you know, Cuba's new cases are in the double digits, that Vietnam has done exceedingly well, that New Zealand as well, until they started loosening up, which was not a great idea, that, you know, that just wasn't warranted. You know, China, you know, all these places, like, and even in Western Europe, who is fucking it up, but just a little bit less. They're not fucking it up quite as badly as the U.S. They, like, pretend to care about public health a little bit more, with the exception of Britain and Sweden. You know, all of them are doing better, and the fact that the U.S. is doing worse than everybody for whom records and data are available tells us that there is more that could be done, and that it could actually work, and that's why we don't hear this. But I really, really hate that he's the one that...
Country had the highest COVID.
Let's strike that. I think it's actually, there are worse... If there's like one piece of useful information that he puts out to the rubes who end up following him, and the grifters who want to pick up his detritus, I mean, I'm actually kind of glad that he's putting that one out there, because people need to know it.
The deaths. What country had the highest COVID deaths?
Also, though, it does occur to me that one question, what the fuck does this have to do with what we're talking about? But still...
According to BBC, an article published on the 12th of May, it was the United States that had the highest COVID deaths.
And has for a very long time. But what does this have to do with the fucking Dutch farmers?
U.S. deaths were above global average. According to all the data I'm seeing, the United States had the highest COVID death rate. So if you're telling me that by criticizing U.S. policies around COVID,
which you haven't been,
I'm killing people, I've got a feeling that you're a little bit wrong.
Like, okay, okay, he said, okay, fucking hell. Okay, so Unruh said he was an anti-vaxxer. I've heard some people say that he'd taken a swing in that direction, but I haven't seen anything about it. But this is just a total tangent. I have to say, I've watched a fair bit of his stuff. I have not heard him criticizing U.S. policy on COVID. Not the U.S. refusal to do anything about it. And he pals around with fucking Max Blumenthal, who opposes any kind of public health precautions.
The U.S. government's policies on COVID have a few problems, I think. Jason needs to Google President Xi's Global Development Initiative. I guess it's degrowth, right? China building high-speed railway and hospitals all over the world is degrowth. This is fun. I love to hate people like this. So there we go. Just wanted to bring Jason on there. That's what my critics are saying now. That's a little bit fun. That's fun stuff.
I love how Jason Unruh gets to be the stand-in for his critics in general. Well, the thing about scientific rationality, the thing about rationality in general, is rationality can help you attain a goal. It can help you understand a problem. It can't actually, on its own, since it's mostly a process, help you decide what a good goal to have is. So it's like if you say like scientific rationality lends itself to whatever objective somebody decides to put it towards. If somebody says, "Well, how can I do genocide better?" Scientific rationality will get them there. You know, somebody says, "How could I organize production so that everybody has a decent and comfortable standard of living and we're not killing the planet?" Scientific rationality will get us there too. I mean, it is.
Isn't it? Isn't that entertaining?
Amoral system.
That's fun stuff. Jason Unruhe, everybody. The Dutch farmers.
Is that actually how he pronounces it?
The Dutch farmers are bad because they want to put out more food, and
their main agricultural export isn't actually food.
Restricting the amount of food that goes out is not degrowth, but China building hospitals and schools all over the world is degrowth.
He also didn't say that. He said that other things that China was doing that had to do with like rewilding agricultural lands and things like that, he said that kind of fell into the category of degrowth. He didn't say building schools and hospitals aren't degrowth.
And if you criticize U.S. government policies, that makes you Malthusian, even though U.S. government policies
that's also not
led to more COVID deaths than anywhere else. That, folks, is the great Jason Unruhe. We love you, Jason. Thank you for that great debate. Awesome stuff. All right.
Okay, finally we have finished that video, and we've got about 20 minutes to go. So maybe we could, okay, where was that? Let's get back to reaction fodder here. Okay. We've got a Muppet debunking Jordan Peterson's Truth About Communism video. We've got Why the Road to Hell is Paved with Good Intentions by PragerU. The oil billionaires at PragerU tell us what's wrong with wind and solar. Why was 90s TV so much more wholesome? Also PragerU. We've got, let me see. Out of the movement to the masses, where did our organization come from? Caleb Maupin again. Anyone have any strong feelings? Or I could also pull up the Caleb Maupin rant on wokeness, which is really something. Oh, more about bread tube serving imperialism. Caleb Muppet on praise of folly. I think we'll go with that. Fuck it.
Hello, this is your host, Todd Lewis of the Praise of Folly podcast. I'm again joined by Caleb Maupin. Now, I had you on about 8 months ago, Caleb, to talk about your book, How Bread Tube Serves
Okay, he's upgraded his camera.
Imperialism. That came out in June of last year, roughly 8 months before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And boy, were you right. Looking at BreadTube Twitter, BreadTube U videos.
Which part was he right about? The part where Thought Slime's entire channel is dedicated to scatology and genitals?
It almost is surreal. I think one of the best expressions of it.
The part where Destiny is considered a member of BreadTube, despite the fact that nobody else in the world would have ever considered him to be that.
This is a few months ago when Vosh tweeted, anarcho-NATOism.
Well, yeah, Vosh is a NATO simp. He's just a neoliberal white nationalist dickhead. You can't, that's the thing. If you want to, even within the group that he put together and declared that it is BreadTube, Vosh is the only one where you can really find people outright saying, being explicitly pro-imperialist. I mean, except for like fucking Destiny, but Destiny is not part of the online left because he's right wing, and he hates the online left.
I don't think anybody could have ever thought that was going to be a thing.
How could you be surprised that Vosh would say something like that? I mean, it's Vosh.
So what was your key insight that allowed you to see that these people would just line up behind World War III?
Well, I mean,
okay, let's just note that he hasn't actually... See, he's using the plural to refer to Vosh. But, he says Vosh said something about anarcho-NATOism, which is true, he did, and it just kind of was not a shock to anyone who knows where Vosh stands on anything. But now he's using that, saying, well, that this is like some these people thing. Yeah, like, I mean, aristocracy, I don't think anyone considered... Yeah, I mean, even Caleb Maupin didn't include her.
I think that was apparent to anyone who paid attention to how their politics was going. The fact that they were attacking anti-war voices like Jimmy Dore, like Jackson Hinkle, like myself.
Oh, okay, so the idea that you could be... here's the problem with that, Caleb. Plenty of people have absolutely no respect for you, Hinks and Jackal, or fucking Jimmy Dore, and are also against U.S. imperialism. See, I mean, the thing that always gets me about his cowpat of a book, completely unedited cowpat of a book, is that if you wanted to make the argument that BreadTube serves imperialism, you could just point to the fact that BreadTube creators have all sorts of stuff analyzing providing a left analysis on all sorts of other things, and there's hardly anything on geopolitics. Though, I mean, when a lot of the more prominent creators actually talk about those subjects, you find that actually, unsurprisingly, they don't really like fucking U.S. imperialism either.
The fact that they were trying their hardest to make socialism supportive of regime change operations. It seemed like when
for example,
there was a big moment like this is the direction they would move in. But that said, I mean, as I laid out in the book, I got information about who was advising them.
No, he didn't, actually. See, he's talking about the fact that one BreadTube creator might have been in contact with a guy called Steve Hassan. And he used that as proof that Steve Hassan was like the fucking puppet master controlling BreadTube. Steve Hassan, you'll be shocked to find out, is Jewish.
And that led me to put forward the thesis in my book, which was this was a maneuver by one section of the ruling class, one section of the deep state against another.
And that thesis, he didn't even attempt to prove it. He just said, this is a thing that exists, and then said, BreadTube is that thing. He made absolutely no effort to apply his analysis to BreadTube. Fuck it, okay, we'll switch. We'll do the rant on who it. Caleb Maupin rant woke.
Made clear. I support indigenous people if they want to have their own territory separate from the United States.
See, the background here is that he and Knob Sarcophagus and Knob Sarcophagus's partner did a stream where they said that they were against land back and defined land back as just an NGO. Without acknowledging that the indigenous demand for, like, their territory back is more than just some fucking NGO that is incorporated with that name. They do the same thing Muppet does the exact same thing with Black Lives Matter. And, does not acknowledge that the people who are actually busting their asses on the ground for the struggle against police terror also are the main critics of these NGOs that swoop in and just take the name and copyright it and whatever. So that's the background here. So a lot of people criticized him for this sort of just conspiratorial nonsense about what land back meant.
I support that. If they want reparations to be paid to them by the American government, I support that, right? And these people that want to jump on me over the land back thing, I have said over and over and over again, I support reparations and I support indigenous people having their own territory. I don't support George Soros, Silicon Valley funded NGO called Land Back.
Which is what he defined land back as the last time that he talked about it.
But if land back means that the indigenous people get their own territory, and they want it, right? If they actually want it and it supports that, then I support that. It means
yeah, and see, if he had actually said that, if he and Dick Casket had actually said that in their stream on the subject, then this would not be an issue. This absolutely would not be an issue. Instead, he just stuck to this bullshit about land back as just an NGO and Soros and Jews and whatnot.
Means reparations to help them, economically develop that territory. I support that. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have come out against land back because the thing is,
wow, he admitted making a mistake. Okay,
land back is a trick, right? There are about 6 different.
Did he say he's a trip or a trick?
Definitions of land back, right? And some of them are things I support, and some of them aren't. And the definition of land back changes 6 times in every fucking argument. And it's so...
No, it doesn't, Caleb. How many people do you actually think who are talking about land back are even aware that there is an NGO by that name? Assuming that what he's saying here is even true, which, I mean, your mileage may seriously fucking vary on that one. But, how many people who are talking about land back are specifically talking about this NGO? How many people who talk about Black Lives Matter are talking about one of these fucking nonprofits that took the name and has been grifting money under that name? Nobody. And the people who actually made land back a term that is associated with something, the people who made Black Lives Matter a phrase that people know, are not grifting for some NGO. They have specific demands, and if you ask them, they'll tell you about them. They kind of want to tell you about them because they want to do the things.
Annoying, right? Sometimes land back means you support this NGO that wants to privatize government land.
Yeah, that's when Caleb Buppet uses it.
Sometimes supporting land back means you want indigenous people to determine their own destiny.
Sometimes meaning basically always.
Sometimes supporting land back means that you think indigenous people have the right to their own territory and
Yeah, also, I mean, those last two things are the only sense in which I've ever heard it used. I've heard it used a lot.
Which I support. Did you hear me? I support that.
Yeah, and if you'd said that in the first place, you wouldn't have been criticized for this. You would have been criticized for all the other bullshit that you said.
Okay? If any oppressed group within U.S. borders wants its own territory, I support that. Okay? So anyone who tells you I don't support oppressed people and their right to their own territory, decolonization, is lying to you. Okay? But sometimes land back means that all white people must leave North America.
I've literally only heard that from white nationalists, white colonialists who are trying to fearmonger about decolonization. People like Vosh.
I don't support that, right? Sometimes land back means that no white that we're not allowed to march for jobs and education because we're demanding jobs on stolen land. I've heard that before.
I haven't.
Right? Euro settlers just want more goods. During Occupy Wall Street, people said that we couldn't march at Occupy Wall Street. You just want jobs in modern capitalism. That land is already occupied.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, those are two completely reasonable things. Yeah, a lot of the people who were in fucking Occupy Wall Street were not actually offering up any kind of anti-capitalist analysis. You had, this whole tossed salad of ideologies It was like the strength and the weakness of Occupy was that it did not really define itself in that way, which meant a whole lot of people got in, but it also meant a whole lot of Nazis got in there as well. A whole lot of fucking right libertarians, a whole lot of end the Fed dickheads, a whole lot of liberals who would then, like in Chicago and LA, would suck up to the cops and then were shocked when sucking up to the cops didn't actually result in the cops treating them nicely when the cops got the order to start cracking skulls.
You know, there's this whole, like, you can't argue for anything. Look, if land back is clearly defined as just supporting the sovereignty of indigenous people, supporting reparations to them for the crimes, then I support it. But if land back is deporting all white people, I don't support that. If land back means we're not allowed to protest for economic...
See, this is a move that you also will hear from Zionists, actually. Like, Zionists will do this exact sort of fear-mongering around the Palestinian right of return and the idea that, you know, equal rights for all inhabitants of historic Palestine, you know, equal voting rights and everything. Zionists fear-monger in this exact same way.
Demands because we have no right to be here because we're living on stolen land. How dare we as white people ever do anything? This is not your land. How dare you? Then I don't support that. The definition of land back changes 6 times in every argument.
You already said that. See, I mean, if you were going to do a Muppet drinking game, one of it would be he repeats himself.
But the thing is, there's a reason they do this trick. Yes, and free...
They do this trick. See, they forced him to do a whole fucking stream where he pretends that land back was not a set of demands that has been articulated. And yes, it's true that there are like different people who take different approaches to it. You know, that's not an unusual thing. For example, you know, another thing where a lot of different people take a lot of different approaches to it. You might have heard of it, Caleb. It's called communism. You got lots of people. I mean, you claim you stand up and you lecture people on communism, and you'd think that you would be familiar with the idea that people can agree on a general principle and have a lot of different understandings of exactly what they want to do with it. That is not a trick. That's just debate within a movement. That's a thing that happens.
Leonard Peltier. I've marched for Leonard Peltier many times.
We're going to get into his fucking activist CV again.
Julian Assange, free Alex Saab, and free Mumia. The reason that they're doing this thing with land back right now, the reason they're doing it,
is that they care about indigenous rights, and you have situations like Wet'suwet'en, where the RCMP is going and just absolutely terrorizing indigenous communities on unceded indigenous land in order to build a fucking pipeline. Or say in Waimapu, the Mapuche territory in what is now Chile, where the current government has sent the military down there to fucking murder people again. I mean, that keeps on happening. I mean, maybe the reason that you see indigenous demands being pressed harder right now is because there's a lot of indigenous struggle going on right now, and it's gotten a lot of prominence with, like, Standing Rock and No Dapple and fucking Wet'suwet'en and, you know, Idle No More and all this stuff. Maybe that's why suddenly people are trying to capitalize on that, because indigenous people are making use of a moment, like a lot of people do, who don't get a chance to get listened to a whole lot, and they're using that moment in order to press an analysis, well, a bunch of different analyses and demands, like people do. It's how movements work. You'd know this if you'd ever actually legitimately been part of one.
Okay, is because the reason there's no clear definition of it is you're not allowed to want one. You just...
Okay, yeah, this is such a good faith way to deal with the fact that he completely unforcedly stepped in shit by trying to declare land back some kind of fucking George Soros conspiracy. He could have just said, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. I should have been clear. I actually stand for these things. I'm just criticizing the fact that NGOs move in and try to glom onto these moments and then fundraise off them and de-radicalize them. And if he had said that, absolutely nobody would be mad at him right now who is associated with the indigenous struggle. I mean, I can't imagine that anyone would be pissed off at him for that, apart from the people who actually really do just want to glom onto things by forming, liberal NGOs and bullshit. Because, he would be announcing support in, for the general principles that people are struggling for. But he didn't do that. And he got criticized for it, which he also should be used to, because being as much of a very public asshole as he is, people criticize him a lot, like I'm doing right now. I mean, God, it's like he can't just. Oh God, I can't.
You just have to support whatever the wokes say. Oh look, a group of.
Oh, it's the wokes. Yeah, I mean, and that somebody is totally cool from an anti-racist standpoint when they start using woke as a pejorative. That is truly one of the biggest tells of our time.
People support this. If you don't support it, you're racist. Well, tell me what it is. I mean,
well, why don't you go read? The people have written a whole lot of stuff about it. Caleb, you claim to be a journalist sometimes. Have you tried looking it up? Have you tried familiarizing yourself with the discussions within the indigenous movements that are calling for land back to find out what they think about it? Because I have this feeling they've probably written a whole lot about it. In fact, I know that for a fact. You know why? Because I've looked at some of the stuff. It's there. The whole discussion is out there. It's being carried out very much in public. If you actually care about what this is, in order to form an informed opinion and take a decent stance on the subject, you could find out. And you certainly don't get to call yourself any kind of journalist if you don't do that kind of basic just Googling. But with that, it is time to wrap up. It is nearly 1 a.m., but I will be back tomorrow night at 11:30. I look forward to seeing you all there, and we will continue with this. We have not gotten to the part where he comes off the hinges yet. We're working up to that. But trust me, I've seen this because I clipped it for a music video. It goes way off the rails in a way that I've not seen him go off the rails otherwise. Now have a good night, and I hope to see you tomorrow.